Hey guys, my name is Chris, I'm a photographer, and today I'm going to show you how you can turn this image into something like this. Right, so let's get into it. I've got this image right here. I shot it about a week ago in Rotterdam, along with another photographer. I'll link his Instagram below. And as you can see, like the colors aren't as apparent as in this one. Like you really see the blue and the purple here, and it really pops. So let's transform this image into like something similar to this. So first off, what I always do is I get over here into the lens corrections and I click remove chromatic aberration. This is just the default thing I do, and enable profile connections for my lens right here. And I shot it with the 17-40 f4 lens, and I'll just leave it at the defaults usually. And then we go over to the basic tab, and we're gonna start with the contrast. And actually, in this example, like I usually like contrasty images, but I'm gonna drop the contrast here a bit. And then I'm going to decrease the highlights like all the way, because this sky is really bright, and then pump the shadows up quite a lot as well. And it looks a bit bright now, so we're going to drop the exposure just a little bit as well. Then over to the whites and blacks, like we can just leave it there. We don't need to do anything to that. And to create a bit of a soft look, I'm also going to decrease the clarity just a little bit. Just like that. And because we want a lot of color, I'm going to increase the vibrance quite a lot. And as you can see, like it looks pretty bland and there's not really much going on when you compare it to this one. But you're starting to see in which direction we're going. So for the HSL tab, this is really important. This is like the tab which really makes the image. We're going to change the hue of the red by like 12 up, and the saturation up a bit as well. And as you can see, the kind of red areas here. I don't know if you can see it, like it's really subtle. You can see some stuff here popping, but just increase this a bit and then decrease the luminance. This is not doing that much, but it just like makes sure that these little things in the sky, I don't know if you can see it, but just makes them flow a bit better. Then for the orange, you going to decrease it a little bit, and then I'm going to increase the saturation, and that's really going to make the colors in the sky in the background pop. And then for the luminance, I'm going to increase it a little bit, just to make it like a bit more brighter and softer in those areas. The yellow I'm just going to leave because there aren't a lot of yellows. It's more like the orange, red, purplish. There isn't a lot of yellow going on. Same goes with the greens. But there is a bit of aqua, and you mostly see it in like the windows here. I don't know if you can see it like right here and right here. What we're gonna do is make them quite blue, a little bit more saturation, and really increase the luminance. And again, this is really subtle, but it does help. And then for the blues, like this is the blue sky, we're going to decrease the hue a little bit, decrease the saturation as well, because we don't really want the blue to be that apparent in the sky, and like really decrease the luminance. And as you can see, that really brings a lot more dramatic stuff into the sky, and it really helps to emphasize, and like it was pretty overexposed, and now it's like a lot better. And then the important stuff, because when you look back to this, you really see that purple plays a huge role in this image. So what we're going to do is we're going to go this all the way to the right, a little bit more saturation, and then drop the luminance on this one as well. And then for the magenta, just bump this up as well and add a bit more saturation and decrease the luminance here as well. Right, then we're going to the split toning. And then for the highlights, we can do some orangey stuff and just bring, it doesn't need to be much, like only 6.5, something like that. And then grab the shadows and just, I don't know, like 13. Yeah, this seems about right. Just like this, and just leave the balance at 0, that's fine. Then we're going over to like the detail. What you can do is you can hold Alt and the masking will appear here. And just put the masking to like 80. Because when you put it like all the way, it's going to be really grainy and it's going to be sharpening all those little stones on the street. And you can get a lot of noise introduced as well. And like, we don't want anything in the sky. We want a bit of sharpening on the edges right here. So just leave it at 82 and then increase the sharpness by like 40. And it should be fine. And you can already see we're coming pretty close to a good image, but we're not there yet. We're gonna do some other dramatic stuff. Like we already did the lens correction, so we can leave that. We're not gonna transform it because it's already pretty good. We're gonna skip the vignette for later because I will do that last. And this is where really the magic happens in the camera calibration. Right, so I always start with the blues. And I'm going to decrease those if it wants to work. Yeah, there we go. Give me 1 second. To like minus 35 and then increase the saturation to like 30 as well. Then we're going over to the greens to like, I don't know, be pretty wild with that, plus 40 or something. And then, yeah, saturation can stay at 0. And then for the reds, go like plus 20 and like 30 here, and that should do the trick. Then for vignetting, we're going to do a vignette of like minus 20. That should be fine. And I think we're almost there, because now we also need to change the curve. Just draw 5 points in here. I've made it like a preset, so I only need to do it once. And really just crush the blacks a little bit. And then make a little bit of like a little S-curvy thing right here. And that should be it, basically. Then what we also should do, by the way, is decrease the temperature here to like 59-ish. And that should actually be pretty close. Right, and as you can see now, the image we edited here doesn't really look like this here. But like the magic really comes in with the adjustment layers. Because as you can see, when I turn this off in this image, it actually looks really similar to this image we got here. So what we will do, let me turn this back on again. What we need to do is we need to make the sky pop. So I'm just going to create an adjustment layer here. And I can just decrease this just slightly and really pump up the saturation here. And decrease the highlights a bit, I don't know. And increase the contrast. Actually increase exposure. Yeah, I'm just doing this on the go. Like I'm comparing it to the other one, but so I can't do everything as exactly the same. And I guess that's that. And then for this area as well, we create a new one. for the reflection here. Let's see. And you can also like increase the exposure a bit, increase the clarity here. I know we can increase the highlights a bit maybe. Decrease the shadows. And for this area here, because we're like leading the person into the center here, we can increase the exposure a bit maybe here. Increase the contrast, saturation as well, just a little bit. And then for the highlights, maybe increase the highlights a bit, because when you decrease it, like you're reversing the effect kind of, so a little bit of increase in the highlights. And then what we can do as well is we can like create an adjustment layer over here, and I don't know, maybe a little bit of exposure because we want a bit more focus on here. You can increase the contrast just a tad, although it won't do that much. Increase the shadows a bit and then decrease the saturation here because we want like all the colors right here. Then one last thing we need to do. We need to go over to this building here, create an adjustment mask over there. And increase the saturation but just a little bit. And decrease the highlights here. We can increase the shadows a bit. Maybe a bit more contrast. And I think that's the image about done. And when we compare it to this one, it's pretty close. And I'll just leave the preset file for this image in the description below for you to download and try out and such. But I just like to give this little overview on how this image was actually really edited, to give you a bit of insight on how I edit my photos. So if you like this video, please make sure to subscribe and thumbs up, and I'll see you in another tutorial.